Alright, Hank, this is how we're gonna do the spacing for the tuna tail or scales pattern on the Trident. So we're just gonna take a piece of tape about the 1-inch mark and wrap it around. I've already cut this one, so normally you just wrap it, cut it, and peel it off, and then you take it and you're going to measure the length of that, so basically the circumference, and it's 79 millimeters. We're doing 6 axes, so it's going to be 13.1 millimeters for each axes. Just easier to make them all 13. Alright, so you're going to take your marked tape. I'm going to make sure that the rod is centered, so I'm just going to lock mine because I can. Line up the tip so it's perfectly straight. And then what I like to do is I'll put the tape back on where I cut it. I'll wrap it around. And those are my axes, as you can see. Every dot represents, except for that little blooper, where we're going to put a line on the blank. I'm going to use the spacing that I sent you. And we're going to start at the 0 axes. So I'm just going to mark these out now. I start every one of these at 1 inch. And I take my ruler and I mark every axis at 1 inch. And sometimes you can tell they're not always precision. It's not a huge deal, but now you can see that the blank is marked. So I'm just going to mark out the first axis. This my wrapper locks in place. I'll show you how I do this, just like you would if you were doing any other. And that's going to be your first set. Now I'm just going to go on and do it for the rest. Okay, now you can see all 6 axes are marked out. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different than what you're going to be doing with like a single color and a black fill-in or any other color fill-in. I'm going to do a fade wrap. I don't want you to focus on the fade wrap. I just want you to focus on the technique of doing the scale or tail wrap. I'm going to be using these 3 colors, okay, to do a fade. You can't see the difference on the camera, but they are different. This is the dark. This is the one's a little bit lighter. and then this one's even lighter than that. But again, don't focus on that. So I have a little chart for my fade, but essentially this is the way the wrap is going to work. This is the first pass. Starting at my 0 axis, and I'm going to put a thread down. Pretty good tension, not to the point where you're going to break the thread, but you want it to have some good tension on it. And this is a non-metallic thread, a little easier to work with. It's going to get you better results. And now you're going to follow all your axes. It's important to know, once you get to the end here, you essentially skip a dot and you go down and you cross at the next dot. You go down on one axis and you come back on the other. Okay, so that is your initial layout, and you can see they're pretty straight. So right now I'm not even going to worry about it, but if you were doing a diamond or something, you definitely want them all lined up. I just pulled off some to get some clean thread because this thread has been sitting in my drawer for a little while. So I normally take about an arm and a half pull. So this dark blue color, this is going to be our fill-in color. This is going to be the color that we're going to do +1 on. And +1 essentially means every time you wrap this, you're going to wrap one more thread than you did the last time. So this color yellow, we're only ever going to wrap one wrap. And I want the points of my tuna tails to be headed down towards the butt of the rod in this particular rod. So I'm going to wrap on the inside of these axes. You'll see. So I'm going to start behind the wrap that I've already laid down. Take your time. Now I like to put a new piece of tape just so I can see where I'm going. And I decided I wanted this wrap to be a little bigger, so I ended up doing, we're going to do 10 passes. So 10 yellow threads, 55 blue threads. So this is where the +1 happens. So the first pass was 1. Now we're going to put 2 down. So on the blank, 1, 2, and then the next wrap will be yellow, and then the one after it will be 3 blue. So one sec. Yes. Sorry, I'm looking at my pattern for colors. Ignore this part. So here goes the wrap for 2. Okay. Now we're going to do our yellow again. And try to keep your threads as close as you can. You don't have to be perfect right here. It does make it easier if you're close. Oops, see, I slipped off. And that's okay, we can fix that. Just back up a little. And just go forward again. So there we go one time. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to go 3 blue threads. It's part of the +1 until we get all the way up to 10 blue threads. I'm going to spare you some time here and try to fast forward it when I get to edit it. You always want to pull your thread off the spool like this too. If you pull it off the top, it'll coil up. So here's 3. Some guys like to wrap these individually, and that's great if you're making super fine, high end, one-of-a-kind wraps. When you're making these for production, it's just easier to wrap the 3 at a time, but you got to lay them down nice and flat. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to do a few more, and I'll show you how it looks. Alright, so what I like to do is stop every once in a while and just pack this stuff down just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just make sure everything's going to fall where we want it to. Be careful. I just slipped a little. And you can ruin the wrap when you slip. Again, I don't like to get too crazy with the packing. Just a little bit here and there. Close some of these up so that your next couple passes go down even smoother. If a thread doesn't want to stay in its spot, don't get too crazy with it until you've laid down some more thread. The tighter you pack these, the tighter the wrap will be, and sometimes it doesn't look good, so you don't always want to compress them too much.